You don't need a six-pack, a luxury car, or smooth pickup lines to make someone feel drawn to you. What you need is something far more powerful, and it's hiding in plain sight. It starts with how you make her feel when you're not even trying. You see, attraction isn't created through pressure, it's created through intrigue. The mistake most people make is trying to impress someone into attraction, but science shows that the human brain is wired for emotional tension, not immediate clarity. The mind craves what it doesn't fully understand, a concept known as the Zeigarnik effect. This psychological principle proves that people remember unfinished experiences more than completed ones. Translation: if you're too available, too predictable, or too quick to give everything, you've already removed the mystery, and with it, the opportunity for lasting attraction. However, when you're slightly unpredictable, when you communicate with confidence but without desperation, her brain starts to wonder, why is he not chasing me? Why do I feel drawn to him when he's not even trying? Why do I keep thinking about him when I barely know anything? Because you're not showing up like everyone else. You're not seeking validation just to get her attention. You're holding your ground. That tension, that mental space where she doesn't have you all figured out, is exactly where attraction is born. This doesn't mean playing games. It means having emotional discipline. You're not reacting, you're choosing. You're not forcing attraction. You're letting it build naturally, subtly, almost invisibly. The longer you can stay in that space where you're confident without needing to prove anything, the more her mind starts to focus on you. You've triggered curiosity, activated desire, without even needing to be physically close. Now she's the one leaning in, not because you begged for it, but because her brain needs to know more. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Her emotions don't respond to logic. They respond to patterns and emotional rhythms. The way you interact when you're around, and even more so when you're not around, plays a huge role. Many believe consistency means texting her good morning every day, or responding quickly with compliments and constant attention. While those actions might seem thoughtful, here's the truth backed by neuroscience. The brain filters out what's predictable. When something becomes too familiar, the brain tunes it out. This is called habituation, and it's the same reason why you stop noticing the smell of your own cologne after a few minutes, or why a song becomes background noise after it's played too many times. So when you give everything too soon, with no edge, no space, no friction, her emotional system becomes numb to it. Contrast that with someone who knows when to engage and when to pull back. Not because he's playing hot and cold, but because he's not emotionally dependent on her response. That person becomes a pattern she can't crack. He makes her feel alive, curious, and challenged. She feels seen, but not completely understood, valued, but not in control. And that activates something powerful within her. The reward anticipation cycle. This is where dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical, begins to spike, not during the reward, but in anticipation of it. Her brain releases more dopamine wondering when she'll hear from you than when she actually does. That's the biological foundation of attraction. You don't need to ignore her or be rude. You just need to understand that silence, space, and your ability to withhold instant gratification create emotional depth. And emotional depth, that's what most people are looking for. In a world full of people seeking approval, you become the mystery that invites her into a story. A story that unfolds slowly, without forcing it, without explaining every move, and without constantly seeking reassurance. You're not an open book. You're a book with missing pages, and she wants to read everyone. Now let's break down something most people overlook: emotional contrast. Attraction isn't built by constantly making her feel good. It's built by making her feel, period. This includes a range of emotional states, not chaos or drama, but contrast. Think about the movies or stories that stick with you. They're not flat. They rise and fall. They make you feel tension, relief, mystery, excitement, loss, and resolution. That same storytelling arc applies to relationships. When someone becomes drawn to you, it's because you've created emotional depth. She doesn't just feel happy around you. She feels seen. She feels slightly off balance in the best way, and she feels challenged without being judged. Why? Because you're not just validating her. You're mirroring her back to herself. You show her who she is by being unshakably grounded in who you are. When she throws a test your way, you don't flinch. You don't over-explain, and you don't rush to fix it. You smile, pause, stay calm, and let her emotions run their course. She feels something unfamiliar: respect. It's subtle at first, but her brain starts tagging you as different, not just charming, but rare. You become a man she can't categorize. You're not trying to win her over. You're not trying to convince her of your worth. And you're definitely not reacting like the guys she's used to manipulating. This creates a new dynamic in her mind. You're not chasing her. She's chasing the emotional clarity she thought she had with you. That's where attraction begins to take root. Not in desperation, but in disruption. Because the truth is, most people don't become obsessed with comfort. They become obsessed with the person who subtly disrupted the patterns they didn't even know were controlling them. You didn't just make her smile. You made her question her standards. You made her feel something new, and her nervous system has no script for it. That's why she thinks about you when you're not around. That's why she checks your profile late at night, waits for your message, and overanalyzes every word. Not because you're playing a game, but because you've stopped playing hers and started leading with something every person has access to, but few ever use: presence, patience, and power over your own emotional state. This is what separates the man she remembers from the man she becomes drawn to. Now here's where the psychology sharpens. By the time she starts feeling your absence, not just noticing it, but feeling it, it's no longer about what you did or didn't do. It's about what she started realizing in the silence you left behind. And here's the catch most people miss. People don't obsess over individuals who constantly reassure them. They obsess over those who give them emotional friction, the kind that forces them to reflect. Because when a woman meets a man who isn't begging for her attention, who doesn't react to every mood swing, who isn't always available at her convenience, she feels something unfamiliar: emotional accountability. You're no longer rewarding bad behavior with more attention. You're no longer stepping in to soothe her whenever she pulls away. Instead, you're creating a healthy distance that lets her do the emotional lifting. And that's where obsession starts to bloom. Not in the noise, but in the space. Because now she's asking herself questions that bother her more than silence ever could. Why do I miss someone I claimed I didn't need? Why does his distance bother me more than his presence ever did? Why do I keep thinking about him when he isn't even trying to be noticed? This internal spiral is no accident. It's biology and psychology working together. Her brain doesn't like unfinished emotional stories. When you walk away without trying to prove anything, without burning the bridge, without chasing or pleading, you leave her story unresolved. That's why she keeps revisiting it. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. Her subconscious is now searching for closure, but you've stopped providing easy access to it. And every time she checks to see if you're still watching and finds that you've truly detached, it stings a little more. Because now you've reversed the dynamic. She used to be the unpredictable one, the one who set the emotional pace. Now, you hold that role without saying a word. And you did it not by being cruel, but by being in control. Not of her, but of yourself. You don't chase anymore. You don't over-explain. You don't try to fix emotions that aren't yours to manage. And that self-possession makes you unforgettable. While others fight for a chance to be seen, you quietly became the one she can't stop seeing in her mind. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You've stepped into your frame. You've embraced silence as strategy. And now she's the one wondering if she'll ever get that version of you again. Spoiler alert. She won't. Not because you're punishing her, but because the man you were when she took you for granted doesn't exist anymore. Now you're evolving, and that version of you can't be accessed by someone who only valued you in pieces. This is where things shift completely. Because now, the silence isn't just silence anymore. It's a mirror. And she's seeing things in that mirror that she spent a long time avoiding. When you were available, when you forgave too quickly, when you were always the one to reconnect, she didn't have to reflect. She could deflect blame. She might have thought you were too emotional, too available, too much. But now that you're gone, really gone, the space you left behind becomes uncomfortable because it's filled with the version of herself she didn't want to face. The version that pushed away real connection. The version that took your effort for granted. The version that played power games and thought she'd always win. The longer you stay silent, the more she has to sit with that version, and it haunts her. She replays conversations. She wonders if she misread your intentions. She begins romanticizing even the smallest moments because she no longer has access to them. And here's the psychological punch. Scarcity always creates value, amplifying value. What was once ordinary now feels rare. What was once predictable now feels impossible to replace. The man she once saw as always, there has now become a ghost, in both the best and worst ways. You're not rude. You're not bitter. You simply stopped showing up in the places she expected you to. No passive likes. No late-night replies. No checking in just to see how she's doing. And that absence hits deeper than anger ever could. Because now she knows you're no longer trying to convince her of your worth. You're not waiting to be chosen. You chose yourself. And that creates a dynamic her ego wasn't prepared for. When someone is used to being the prize but suddenly feels like they've lost you, it disrupts their entire emotional script. That's when she begins to spiral in silence. You won't see it. She won't post it. But internally, she's fighting the urge to reach out, to test your temperature, to see if you're really as detached as you appear. If you hold the line, if you don't fold, don't flinch, don't slip back into old habits, you'll reach a place most people never do. You become unforgettable because obsession isn't just created by how you show up. It's created by how you disappear with dignity. You didn't ghost her. You evolved. And that's the one thing she never prepared for. This is the part no one talks about. There's a point where the silence you gave her stops being mysterious and starts becoming threatening. Not because you were cruel, not because you punished her, but because the version of you she expected to fall back into her hands no longer exists. That terrifies her more than anything. At first, she might have seen your silence as a reaction, a test, a a game. She thought, he'll reach out eventually, he always does. She thought she still had time. But slowly, day by day, something begins to feel off. She notices that you're no longer orbiting around her mood swings. You're no longer emotionally checking in to make sure she's okay. You're no longer giving her a reaction. And that absence becomes the loudest thing in the room. It's in that silence where her ego starts to fracture. Because if you're not chasing her anymore, if you're no longer trying to prove your worth, if you're out there living, laughing, breathing without her, then she has to face the reality she never saw coming. She may have overplayed her hand. All this time, she thought she was irreplaceable. She thought no matter what she said or did, you'd always come back. You always did before. But now, you've gone quiet. Not passive-aggressive, not angry, not bitter, just steady, calm, and unbothered. And that calmness drives her wild because it tells her everything she didn't want to believe. You didn't need closure. You didn't need validation. You just needed clarity. And once you got it, you left the door wide open behind you, but didn't turn around to check if she was following. That's when she starts remembering the details. Your voice, your presence, the way you looked at her when you weren't trying to impress anyone, the way you listened. And now those memories hit harder because there's no new version to compare them to. Every new person feels hollow, forced, and like a distraction. She scrolls, she laughs, she distracts herself. But late at night, when it's quiet again, she remembers. And the memory of you no longer feels like a win. It feels like a loss. A quiet, slow-burning loss she never expected to feel. And that's when she realizes she didn't just lose your attention. She lost access to the version of you that wanted her. And that's a storm she'll never admit to anyone. But it's already begun. And all you had to do was nothing. You focused on yourself. You didn't retaliate. You simply rose silently, but with presence. And now the silence she once saw as a strategy has become a consequence. Closing call to action. If you've watched this far, drop a comment below. I don't chase, I attract. Let her wonder. Let her feel it. Let her learn the hard way what it means to lose a man who finally remembered his worth.